This is chapter 18, Sannyasa Yoga, also sometimes translated as Moksha Sannyasa Yoga. It is a summing of all the teachings of the previous 17 chapters, and so it will give some final conclusive answers to some of the questions of Arjuna. Sannyasa itself is a very old tradition in the subcontinent. The idea of renunciation, to become a sannyasi, is considered to be a very matured person, evolved person, who is no longer bound by karma. Karma is not affecting the sannyasi. And here there is another model given of tyagi. The tyagis and the sannyasis, the method of the Gita is always to reconcile differences and present its own unitive vision. That is a yoga. Whenever you say yoga, it means you are uniting. You are uniting opposites or uniting conflict into a unitive approach. That is a yoga. So Arjuna's question is about these two aspects, the sannyasa and the tyaga. Which is superior, which is better? So sannyasasya mahabaho tattvam ichhami veditum. Tyagasya cha hrishikesha prathak keshini sudana. Now Sri Krishna is addressed here as Keshini. Keshin was a asura, and since Krishna had once killed him, he is called Keshini Sudana. So he desires to know the truth of renunciation and also of relinquishment. Veditum. Veda means always knowledge, so he wants to know the truth of renunciation, truth of relinquishment, or the truth of sannyasa and the truth of tyaga, and also each distinctly. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam. So that action or karma which is devoid of desire, kama, that is called sannyasa. And Sarva Karma Phala Tyaga, which means renunciation of the fruits or the benefits of action. There is a distinction here. One is renunciation of desire-prompted actions, and the other is relinquishing the benefit of all actions. The yogi is an active person, and any action will bring its fruit, its phala. And when a person does not claim his right on the fruit of an action, then he becomes a tyagi. And when a person performs an action without any desire, not getting prompted out of any desire, but out of principle, when a person performs an action out of compassion, out of a certain high ideal, he becomes a sannyasi. He is not doing that action out of any desire. That action is not prompted by any desire. So these are the two distinct classes of highly evolved or matured people. Those who relinquish desire and those who relinquish the benefit of actions. Tyajam doshavaditi eke karma prahur manishinaha yajna dana tapaha karma na tyajyam iti cha apare. But even to be a sannyasi, if you think you can relinquish all karma, that is not possible, because it is not possible to give up all karma. To maintain this body, some karma is necessary. So nobody can actually relinquish all the action. Action should be given up as evil. That is the rationalist view. So right from the beginning of the Gita, we have one view, that is the rationalist view, the view of the Sankhyans. And there is also the Vedic view, or the view of the ritualist. So from the second chapter also we see that the Sankhya and the yogis. The Sankhyans are the rationalists. They are philosopher types, and they are heterodox. And the Vedic people are orthodox, and they are ritualist. So in the Vedas, we find that there is no mention of Atman or reincarnation. If you study the Rig Veda, then the Rigvedic concept of a good life was to propitiate the gods, to please the gods with burnt sacrifice. When offerings were made in the Havan, the flames will carry the offerings to the gods. The gods will be pleased with the offerings, and they will in turn bestow the blessings on the people. So this was their idea. And so by performing these sacrifices, bigger and more elaborate sacrifices, till you come to Ashwamedha Yajna, which was considered the biggest sacrifice that a person could do, you gain that much merit and ultimately live with Indra. But this Vedic concept, when you come to Vedanta, that was modified. And the goal of life was not to live with Indra in heaven, but to realize one's own self. So Atma Vichar became the central idea in spiritual life. Not propitiating the gods, but purifying one's own self and realizing the truth within one's own self. This was the Upanishadic contribution. This transition from a ritualistic idea of life to a contemplative idea of life is the progression of the development of the spiritual ideal. So sannyasa comes into the picture when you are thinking of self-realization. And Tyaga comes into the picture when you are thinking of self-realization. The purification of the self will only come through these practices. How does a person remove the impressions of karma, the samskaras that have gone into us from lifetimes, of so many karmas that have been performed, and also how does one release oneself from one's own present karmas? That is possible only through these methods of relinquishing, giving up the fruits of one's actions. When you say giving up, it means not claiming the rights. They will come naturally. And also not having any desire-prompted action. So action was not a way to realize the higher self. This has been mentioned even by Shankara when he says by karma a person cannot realize the self. Karma is only useful to purify one's antakarna, the mind and intellect and consciousness that is within a person, which is the instrument of a person. To purify that instrument, we perform karma. If we perform that karma as a yoga, then that karma yoga helps us to purify our antakarna. After the antakarna has been purified, then the person is able to arrive at the truth. He is able to understand the subtle nature of the truth. So action should be given up as evil, declares some rationalist. So rationalist view was that since action cannot bring liberation, it is better to abandon action. This is what the Gita corrects by saying it is impossible to abandon action. Therefore abandon only the fruit of action, not the action itself. And some say acts of sacrifice, giving and austerity should not be abandoned. That is yajna, dana and tapasya, as we studied in 17th chapter. These are the purifiers of the wise. Tapasya brings austerity, austerity brings goodness. From goodness, a good mind, and from the good mind comes the self. So the base or the very foundation is tapasya, austerity. Nischayam shrunume tatra tyage bharata sattamaha tyago hi purusha vyagraha trividha samprakirtitaha. So now he goes on to give a settled conclusion about tyaga and about yajna and about dana. So he says the settled conclusion about relinquishment or tyaga is of three kinds. The acts of sacrifice, gift and austerity should not be relinquished. Each should be observed because yajna, dana and tapasya are the purifiers of rational men. But even these actions should be done leaving out attachment and desire for results. If you understand the nature of attachment, it is the attachment which creates the disturbance in a person and which causes the disturbance in the judgment of a person and also in the creative intuition of a person. And desire creates provocation, and from desire comes more samskara, and from that comes more karma. So the root cause are these two factors, that is the attachment and the desire, raga and kama. So if a person can abandon these two, performing action without raga and performing action without kama, that is pure karma. Doing a karma with purity means that karma which is devoid of these two factors. What are those karmas? See, whenever an act of compassion is done, it is an act where there is no raga and no kama. So there is no escapism that is being suggested here. Sannyasa is many times misunderstood as a form of escapism. It means you leave the world and you go away. If you go to the Himalayas, you will find many people are sitting there who call themselves sannyasis, who have escaped from life. They found themselves in troubling situations, so they leave everything and go away, go into the mountains. But that is not a proper form of renunciation, because if a person thinks he can escape, then he won't get the full benefit of that renunciation. That type of sannyasa is here condemned when he says, Niyatasya tu sannyasah karmano no upapadyate mohat tasya parityagas tasma tamasa parikirtitah. Renunciation of necessary, inevitable action. We are caught in nitya karmas. Nitya karmas means necessary actions. And the renunciation of such karmas does not arise. Renunciation of such through delusion is said to be inert dark. So that is the tamasic type of renunciation. From that there is no benefit. And the other tyaga is a rajasic tyaga. The rajasic tyaga is from people who fear bodily trouble. They think dukkha kaya klesha bhayat. They are worried or they are fearful that their body will undergo some trouble and they will be undergoing some pain. So willfully, if that sort of renunciation is done also, then the benefit doesn't come. So this means that the renunciation is not simple, it is not innocent. It should be innocent, it should be very pure and should have a simplicity about it. So avoidance of attachment and the fruit of one's benefit, this is the sign of the mature mind. As long as the mind does not reach that level of maturity, then a person is bound to be attached and bound to long for the desire for the fruit. And as long as that feeling is there in a person, that person is bound to be in a state of bondage. So when necessary action is done, O Arjuna, recognizing its imperative character, that means at one level of our existence we have to act just to preserve ourselves. That is imperative. I mean, there is no escape from it. You cannot find any excuse. It must be done. When a person clearly understands necessity of actions and performs those necessary actions, but relinquishes only the attachment and the benefit, then that becomes sattvika. That is the pure state of the sannyasi. So that is why good sannyasis, pure sannyasis are very busy people. They are always acting, they are always working, they are always conducting themselves, involved in some activity or the other. But none of that activity has their own personal gain in it. They are running big organizations, they are very active, they work 12 to 14 hours a day. But in that work they don't think of their personal benefit. They are thinking of a benefit coming to a larger group of people. So that is how the character, the nature of that action changes from attachment and desire for results to detachment and no desire for result. When the action is done well, the good result automatically comes. So they concentrate only on doing the action to perfection, doing the action well, paying great attention to all the details of the action and leaving the results, for the results take care of themselves. The relinquisher, pervaded with purity of strong intelligence and of sundered doubts, hates not unpleasant action, nor is he attached to pleasant ones. So this is another yogic attitude, to free oneself from one's karmic inheritance, as it were. You see, you do not hate the unpleasant and don't long for the pleasant. Normally a person will try to avoid the unpleasant and he longs for the pleasant. So this makes the samskaras more strong, powerful. And the way to get out of that is to maintain a neutral attitude, a balanced mind where whether it is unpleasant or pleasant, it does not disturb the person. Wisdom teachers say if a person tries to avoid an unpleasant action, then he will find that he gets into more unpleasant situations. But if he does not try to avoid unpleasant situations, then he finds that only pleasant things come to him. Nahi dehabhrit sakyam tyaktum karmani aseshataha yastu karma phalatyagi satyagi iti abhidhiyate. So action, as we said, is binding on all. In some form or the other, in some way or the other, people are bound by action, by karma. Now karma is very wide. Karma is not just the brute action that we do with our hands and feet, but a thought is also an action. Thinking is also a karma. So there are people who are engaged in thinking. There are people engaged in the philosophical world, in the world of ideas, in the world of decisions, in the world of policies, and in the world of actual physical work. So you can see it's a big, wide field, and all of them are bound in their own particular way, in some form or the other, by their own karmas. So it is impossible for an embodied one to completely relinquish action. Nobody can be called a pure and absolute sannyasi for this reason. If a person thinks that he is a sannyasi, then he is deluding himself. But he who relinquishes the benefit of action is verily called a relinquisher. So this is the tyagi. The definition of the tyagi is the person who relinquishes the benefit of action. Anishtam ishtam mishram cha trividham karmanah phalam bhavati atyaginam pretya natu sannyasinam kvachit. So here there are two categories of people, the tyagis and the atyagis. Those who are atyagis or non-relinquishers, they have these three experiences. They have a pleasant, unpleasant and mixed benefits, accrue in the spiritual progress beyond of a non-relinquisher, but none anywhere to renouncers. Because of the nature of tyaga, no karma sticks to them, and therefore there is nothing to hinder their spiritual progress. But the atyagi, they can have these three categories of pleasant, unpleasant and mixed benefits. So here we take materialists at one end and the person who has given up action, and when his reason has matured, that is the other end. The tyagi is a person who has given up action because his reason has matured. He has begun to understand. The nature of things. Then his very need to act drops off from him. At the other end is a materialist for whom action is paramount. He is steeped. He is completely caught in action. Panchaitani mahabhavo karanani nibodhame sankhye kritante proktani siddhaye sarva karmanam. So here there is a historical reference to the Krita Yuga. Krita Yuga means the Satya Yuga. Just like there are historical references to Manu and Ikshvaku. So here also the Gita makes a historical reference to the age called Krita, that is the Satya Yuga. So the 5 causes for the accomplishment of all actions, as stated in the Sankhya at the end of the age called Krita. So any action that is performed, if you analyze its components, there are 5 causes for the accomplishment of any action. Adhishtanam tatha karta karanam cha prithak vidam vividhas cha prithak cheshta daivam chaiva atra panchamam. That is the basis and actor. Adhishtanam is the basis or the foundation. That and then the actor, that is the karta. Then the prithak, various kinds of karanam, that is the mental instruments. Prithak cha vividham, and several varied movements, cheshta, activities. And the 5th factor is the divine, daivam. Only when these 5 come together, then an action is possible. The basis, the actor, the mental instruments, the varied movements and the divine factor. So whatever action a man undertakes by body, speech and mind, justifiable or the opposite, these 5 are its causes. Here what is happening is we are reconciling high wisdom with the actuality. On the actual plane, here we are with our 5 sense organs and 5 organs of action, where we have to act. So it's called the actual plane, where action is possible. And at the other end is the absolute, which we say has no action, is actionless. It is only the sakshi. So between the sakshi and this actual action that we have are 5 factors. And that is the karta, the actor, the adhishthanam, the basis, the various type of mental instruments, that is man, buddhi, chitta, hankara, that is the antakarna, and the various type of movements here, and the 5th, the divine factor. There must be the grace of God for every action to be accomplished. Whether it is in the social sense, whether it is favorable or unfavorable, justifiable or unjustifiable, that is immaterial. These 5 factors are the causes. Tatraivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuyah pashyati akrita buddhivan nasa pashyati durmatihi. Now this being the case, the man of perverted mind, durmati, sumati is good mind, durmati is perverted mind, who because of unfinished intelligence looks upon himself as the isolated agent of action, he does not see indeed. Now people who don't have the wisdom, ability to see with wisdom, they cannot see these 5 factors, and they think that as an isolated agent, I am the actor. I alone have done an action. That is how they think. And this was the problem with Arjuna too. He was thinking that he would be the cause of the destruction of his family members, etc. Until he got the wisdom himself, he also thought that he is the sole agent. Yasya na aham krito bhavo buddhir yasya na lipyate Hatva api sa ima lokan na hanti na nibadhyate. He who is free from ego sense, whose intelligence is unaffected, though he kills these people, he neither kills nor is bound. So this ego sense, ahankara, this creates in us the sense of agency, the karta, bhokta, nyata. That sense of I am doing, I am knowing, I am enjoying. That is based upon the ego sense. So as long as the ego sense is persisting, then a person thinks that he is the doer. He feels the responsibility. So the relation between action and counteraction, contemplation, is hard to understand. Contemplation is the goal. Contemplation is what is going to bring you your peace of mind. You are going to arrive at the answer through contemplation, not through action. But our starting position is action. So from action, we have to move towards contemplation. And in the Gita, what is being taught is contemplative action, how to act with contemplation. From Arjuna, who was just a Kshatriya warrior, from that he is taught the method of being a contemplative as well. Knowledge, the knowable and the knower are the threefold incentive to action. The mental instrument, the action and the actor are the threefold aggregate base of action. These things always come in triads. So knowledge, knowable and the knower. And action, actor and the activity. So here, where does the incentive of action come? It comes from these threefold. The knowledge, the knowable and the knower. And where does the base of action come? That is the mental instrument, the action and the actor. These are the threefold aggregate base of action. So this is the relation between the contemplation and the action. Contemplation will work in the level of knowledge, knowable and the knower. And action will work at the mental instrument, the action and the actor. Jnanam karma cha karta che trividhaiva guna bhedatah prochyate guna sankhyane tathavad shrunu tanyapi. So three kinds of conditionings applied to each of the three constituents of action, making 9 subdivisions. So now we have made a broad division between the knowledge, actor and action. And then each of these is again influenced by the 3 gunas, so that makes 9 different categories. 3 types of knowledge, 3 types of actions and 3 types of actors according to the gunas, which we are already familiar with. There can be sattvic knowledge, there can be a sattvic actor, or there can be a sattvic action. So that is being now explained. First of all, the right type of knowledge is that by which the one unexpended being is seen in all beings, undivided in the divided. Know that knowledge to be pure. So pure knowledge has that comprehensive way of looking at all things and seeing that one extended being is in all, that the essence of all beings is one. If you can see that, then your knowledge is pure. Whereas that knowledge which sees multiplicity of beings as distinct in different kinds because of separateness, know that knowledge to be rajasic. So rajasic knowledge sees multiplicity. It sees different beings and each being is distinct from the other. And they are different kinds because of separateness. So there is an incapability of this person to rise to a higher level of seeing everything as one. So that is a rajasic kind of knowledge. And the next is a blind kind of, fanatic kind of knowledge, and it reflects mostly from lazy mind, that is insignificant, it's very petty, that you say is the tamasic knowledge. Now action also, that action which is obligatory, performed without attachment, without affection or disregard, by one not benefit motivated, that is called pure. But that action done with great strain, by one desire prompted, or possessed of egoism, is called rajasic. And that action undertaken from confusion of values, disregarding consequences, loss or injury and human limitation, is called tamasic. Then we come to the 3 types of actors. That is, the actor free from attachment, who avoids references to himself in the first person, endowed with firmness and zeal, unmoved by success or failure, is called pure. The actor passionate, prompted by desire for benefits, greedy, violent-natured, maladjusted, with moods of exaltation and depression, That is called affective passionate or rajasic. And that actor who is misfit, crude, stubborn, deceitful, malicious, lazy, despondent and procrastinating is called dark or tamasic. So in this way you find that three types of reason and three types of firmness are again enumerated. So in this chapter you have a very comprehensive view of our own situation and all the possible factors that are influencing us. See, in the scheme of the Gita now we have to come back into the Mahabharata. Gita starts from the Mahabharata and it ends in the Mahabharata. So this chapter is preparing us to enter into the Mahabharata story again. So naturally, most of the teachings are concerned with our day-to-day life and our surroundings. The practical teachings of how we actually face the world. When we actually face the world, how can we distinguish the various characteristics and the various qualities and the various categories that we have. And now we come to three types of reason and three types of firmness also. The reasoning which is pure, which sees things in clarity, the reasoning which is colored, and the reasoning which is faulty. And the firmness which is also proper firmness by which a person sticks to the path and keeps his track steady. And the firmness which is wavering and the firmness which is totally misdirected. Firm but stubborn and holding on to wrong values. So these are applicable, you can say, to the battlefield as such. So when Arjuna will be back in the battlefield, he can have the discrimination or reason, bravery or firmness, and happiness. These are the values in the battlefield. Here now the threefold difference of reason and firmness also, according to the modalities of nature, O winner of wealth, to be set forth fully and severally. That reason which knows the positive way of action and the negative way of inaction, what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, the binding and the liberating action, that is pure. So this is a more philosophically minded person. That reason which takes right and wrong, the permissible and the banned, in a sense incompatible with reality, that, O Partha, is affective, passionate. And that reason enveloped in darkness which regards wrong as right and sees all values pervertedly, O Partha, is dark. And the firmness by which the activities of the mind, vital functions and the senses of Partha are kept from deflecting from the true path by yoga is pure. But the firmness by which one holds fast, O Arjuna, to duty and pleasures and wealth, desirous of the results of each when the occasion presents itself, that firmness, O Partha, is affective, passionate. And that firmness by which a stupid man does not give up sleep, fear, grief, despondency and wantonness, that firmness, O Partha, is dark. So now we have three kinds of happiness also. The happiness which is like gall at first, which is bitter, ambrosial at the end, born of lucid self-understanding, is called pure. That happiness arising out of contact of the senses with objects, at first like ambrosia, but at the end like gall, is called affective, passionate. And that happiness which at first and in after effects is self-confounding, arising from sleep, lassitude and listlessness, is called dark. So these factors affect all entities. Nobody can escape these factors. There is no entity either on heaven or in earth among the Vedic divinities that could be free from these three modalities born from nature. Right from the human to the divine to the devas, all categories of beings are influenced by these modalities born from nature. So nature has its influence in creating classes of people. The superior class who have got good understanding, good firmness, good reasoning and pure happiness, and the not so luckies who have wrong understanding, wrong firmness and no happiness. This is where mind and matter meet. When you say gunas, guna is like the interface where the psychological aspect and the physical aspects are meeting. Subjective and objective aspects are going to meet. So on one side is the world of actuality, and the other side is the world of experience. And between that is these three modalities, which create for each individual his own unique experiences. So on one side you say the self is the same for all people, the outside environment is the same for all people, but each one's individual experiences will differ according to this combination of gunas. So this became the basis for caste also. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, their vocations are also separately assigned in conformity with the modalities of nature. Arising from their own modalities, people were assigned different duties or vocations. So this is verse 41. Brahmana Kshatriya Visham Shudranam cha parantapa karmani pravibhaktani swabhava prabhavair gunaihi. Here there is a reference to caste, and caste is a very central cultural identity for the Hindu people. So Brahmana, Kshatriya, Visham and Shudra, Chaturvarna as they call it. These are the four divisions of the Varna. Varna itself means color. So it means that it is the color, not literal color, but the conditioning of a person's mind, the conditioning of a person's personality which decides his Varna. Now in the Rig Veda itself, you will find the first reference to caste. In the Rig Veda they have a cosmic Purusha, the cosmic person. And from the mouth of that cosmic person came the Brahmana. From the arms of the cosmic person came the Kshatriya. From the thighs of the cosmic person came the Vaishyas. And from the feet of the cosmic person came the Shudras. So the Brahmanas were the people who studied and gave the Vedas. And the Kshatriyas were those who engaged in warfare. And the Vaishyas were those who did trading and farming. And the Shudras were those who had no choice but to serve. Through service of the other castes, they had their salvation. And then there was a fifth category called Avarnas. Avarnas were the lowest of the low. They were not even included in the Varnas. They were considered outside the caste system itself. They were the poorest of the poor, the Avarna. So the Gita here refers to caste, but in a different sense. It says that these vocations that you see were assigned in conformity with the modalities arising from their own nature. According to the nature of a person, it doesn't say according to the birth of a person, but according to the nature of a person, these vocations, these different activities and different ways of expressing themselves were assigned to me, according to the gunas. As you know, the guna means the sattva, rajas and the tamas. So sattva guna is purity, goodness, the sense of devotion, non-hurting, ahimsa. That is present in the Brahmins. Kshatriyas have got rajas in them, passion and action, activity. So they became the warriors. And Vaishyas have got rajas, but they have also got little bit of tamas. So they became the trading community, the farming community. Finally the Shudras, they are full of tamas. Therefore, they have no choice but to serve. This is elaborated here. Shamo damas tapaha shaucham kshantir arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahma karma swabhavajam. Now swabhava means one's nature. We have a swarupa, we have a swabhava, and we have a swadharma. Swarupa means our physical form, our appearance. Swabhava means our nature, our character, what sort of temperament we have, whether we are kind or whether we are hardworking or whether we are intelligent, all these are our swabhava. Each person has a different swabhava. And finally swadharma, that duty or that work or that vocation which suits us and is properly tuned to our own expression, swadharma. So here it is the matter of swabhava, calmness. Sham means calmness. Dam means restraint, self-restraint, having control over yourself. that is dam. Tapaha, that means austerity. And shaucham, purity. Kshantir, that is forgiving. If somebody has done some harm, you forgive. If somebody has made a mistake, you say it's all right. If somebody has done some error, you forgive. Arjavam. Arjavam is straightforwardness. That is the root from which Arjuna comes. The name Arjuna comes from Arjavam, being straightforward, saying whatever you want to say straight, not being in any way cunning or deviating or sidetracking, but being straight. That is Arjavam. Jnanam, that is wisdom, knowledge. Vijnanam is applied knowledge. There is always two aspects to knowledge. One is the pure knowledge, theory, and the other is the applied knowledge, practical wisdom. So knowing both the pure and the practical. Astikyam means belief. He is not a Nastik, he is an Astik. He believes in God. And Brahma Karma. These are the activities, the karma of a Brahmana, born of his own nature. So these qualities will show the Brahman nature, the nature of calmness, the nature of control, the nature of forgiveness, the nature of straightforwardness, the nature of cleanliness and having belief. Now we come to the next, which is Shauryam Tejo Dhritir Dakshyam Yuddhe Chapi Apalayanam Danam Ishvara Bhavascha Kshatram Karma Swabhavajam. That is Shauryam, prowess. He is brave. He is not afraid. Tejaha is full of brightness. To look at him is like looking at a bright person. Dhritihi is firm. Whatever he decides to do, he does it. He does not change his mind. He is firm. Dakshyam, skilled in fighting. Anything that he undertakes, he does it with great skill. Cha api apalayanam yuddhe. That means in battle, never absconding. He doesn't run away from the battlefield. He sticks to his post. Dhanam, this is another quality of the Kshatriya. He is generous. He gives freely. Cha Ishvara Bhavascha. Ishvara Bhava means dignity. He is dignified. Kshatram Karma Swabhavajam. This is the pattern of activity of the Kshatriya. So in the case of Kshatriya, they are action oriented, full of prowess, brightness, firmness, skill in fighting, never absconding, having dignity, having generosity. So you see, it is more action oriented. In the case of Brahmana, it is more meditation oriented, calmness, self-integrity, tapasya, jnanam, vijnanam. These are all contemplative values. That means the Brahmana is a person whose mind is turned more inward. Kshatriya is a person whose mind is turned more in the field of action. But in that field of action also, his activities are governed by good character, prowess. His actions are of a very high grade, high quality. So that is a Kshatriya quality. This can mean at any time. Even today, we have the Kshatriya type of personality who are good leaders today. They have that Kshatriya quality. They have prowess, they are firm, they don't fear, they don't abscond, and they are generous, they have dignity. And we have people who are calm and who have interest in study and who have straightforwardness. So those are the Brahmana types. Then we come to the third category and the fourth category. Krishi Gauraksha Vanijyam Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam Paricharyatmakam Karma Shudrasyapi Swabhavajam. Now we come to a person where that person has not got much brightness. So he says Krishi. Krishi means plowing, tending. Gauraksha, tending gau, looking after the cows. Vanijyam, vanijyams are trading. Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam. So this is the items of the Vaishya. Vaishya Karma's mind works in these things. He thinks about plowing the field, farming and looking after his cows, and he trades. Plowing, tending cattle and trade are the items of vocation of the Vaishya. Paricharyatmakam api Shudrasya Swabhavajam. And menial work, menial service, cleaning the floors, washing up, doing all these sort of menial jobs which don't require much skill or much intelligence, that is the Shudrasya Swabhavajam, born of the Shudra's own nature. So here this is a fourfold division of the types of nature found among human beings. It does not mention here anywhere that a person born in a certain family should have a certain varna. And all over the world, every society has got its own divisions. There are aristocrats, there are nobles, there are the common people, the working class, the bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie. If you look at different societies around the world, you will find that they make their own divisions. French society, there was the rich aristocracy who lived a very luxurious life, and they owned all the land, they were the landowners, and then the peasants who had to work on the land, and who had no rights and had no wealth, and all the wealth and all the rights was with the hands of the aristocracy. So different societies have in different ways divided themselves. Whereas here we have this form. But in the case of Indian society, it became crystallized over time, and it became a rigid system like compartments. Each compartment became a fixed compartment, and one person could not move from one compartment to the next. What happened in modern society is, especially with the coming of democracy, anybody could move. If a person worked hard, he could train himself, he could educate himself, he could move from the working class to the middle class. From the middle class he could move to the upper middle class, and he could become a professional. So we are living in times when the whole society has undergone much change. But for thousands of years, Indian society was divided according to these divisions. But the beauty here is that it is based on the nature of a person, and anybody can change their nature through discipline, through right associations, and through careful training. Anybody can change. So that is the openness of the Gita. The Gita keeps it as an open possibilities, allows all the possibilities to take place. Sve sve karmanya abhiratah samsiddhim labhate narah swakarma niratah siddhim yatha vindati tachrunu. Now we come to the concept of the swadharma, the idea of how by doing one's own vocation, what is proper to one's own person, or doing one's own duty, a person attains siddhi, perfection. Sve sve karmanya, whatever type of action, devoted each to his own occupation, man reaches perfection in practical yoga. How devoted to his own occupation, he attains such perfection that do here. Now we must remember that Arjuna is a Kshatriya by training and by birth, and it is his duty to fight in the battlefield. But he wants to give up his Kshatriya role and become a sannyasi. This is how the Gita started. Arjuna said, I don't want to fight. I want to beg and live like a renunciate, a sannyasi. I don't want to kill these people, my relatives. Now, socially speaking, a sannyasi is superior to a Kshatriya. In society, everybody will respect a sannyasi as a person who has attained a high degree of perfection in his life. Sannyasis are perfected beings. And a Kshatriya has still not reached that level. Kshatriya is still at a lower level. So, Krishna should tell Arjuna, welcome, wonderful, very good, that you have decided not to be a Kshatriya, but you have decided to be a sannyasi. But that is not the teachings of the Gita, or that is not the perfect way. But by doing his own duty, which was of a Kshatriya, Arjuna will attain the siddhi, will attain perfection, not by giving up his swadharma and doing somebody else's dharma. So devoted each to his own occupation, man reaches perfection in practical yoga. In our practical life, by being devoted to our own occupations, we will reach our perfection. In the Mahabharata, there is a story about this. It is called Vyadha Gita. Vyadha means a kasai, a butcher. And the story is about a sadhu who goes to the forest and he does tapasya for 12 years. And while he was doing tapasya, a bird drops. It's dropping into his hand while he was doing puja. So he gets angry and he looks at the bird in anger, and the bird is suddenly burnt to death. So he becomes very proud. He says, "Oh, I have got this power now. Just by looking at the bird died." And so he decides to leave the forest and goes towards the village. And when he reaches the village, he feels hungry. So he stands outside a house for bhiksha. And in that house there was an invalid man being tended by his wife. So she says, "Maharaj, please wait. I will attend to my husband and then I will give you something to eat." Sadhu becomes very angry. So the lady tells him, "Look, I am not that bird who was killed by one of your looks." So the sadhu was really surprised. He said, "How did you come to know this? What knowledge did you have? How did you know these things? What power do you have? I have stayed for 12 years in the forest and I have performed all kinds of austerity. All I got was some power to kill a bird, but what you have got is you can see into the future, you can see into the past, you can read my mind as it were. How did you get this power?" So she says, "Go down to the end of the road and there is a kasai, a butcher there. You ask the butcher, he will teach you." So Sadhu gets even more upset that I am a holy man, pure man. Should I go to learn from a butcher who does such a horrible job? He is cutting meat and he earns his living in such a dirty way. How can he teach me? But he goes, and as soon as the butcher sees the Maharaj, he says, "Oh Maharaj, you are the man who killed the bird and this Mata sent you here, isn't it?" So he is even more surprised. So what the story teaches is that these people were doing their swadharma. They were doing their own occupation. One was the occupation of a housewife and the other was the occupation of a butcher. But by doing their occupation, they reached perfection. How does this happen? This is being explained now. Yatah pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam sarva karmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati manavaha. He from whom all existences come forth. Now in the Upanishads also we say, that from which everything comes, that by which everything is sustained, and that into which everything will merge at the time of dissolution, that from which everything has come, that by which everything is being sustained, and that into which everything will merge. Know that, try to know that from which all this is coming. So here also in this context of yoga, the worshipper, he is offering worship to that from which everything has come, to that from which everything is being sustained, and to that into which everything will eventually merge. And with what is he worshipping? Is he worshipping with a flower? Is he worshipping with a fruit? No. He is worshipping by his occupation, by his work. Whatever his job is, whatever his work is, he says, "This is my offering to you, O Supreme, from which everything has come, by which everything is sustained, and into which everything will go." If a person understands this secret, he becomes a siddhi. He gets siddhi, he gets perfection. Yataha pravrittir bhutanam. Pravritti means coming forth. Pravritti, expansion, development, from which all this development has come, from which all actions are coming. Yena sarvam idam tatam. And by which everything is pervaded. It is everywhere. There is no place where it is not. Sarva karmanyabhi swakarmana. Swa means one's own karma. By my own karma, whatever is my karma, with that I am abhyarcha. Abhyarcha means to worship. I am worshipping you with my own karma. Whatever karma I am doing it as a worship to you. Siddhim vindati manava. Then your manava, man gets siddhi. He wins perfection. There are many prayers like this where he says, "May my walk be a circumambulation to you. May my chatter be praises to you. Whatever words I use, may those words be considered as praise to you. And whenever I walk, may that walk be considered as I'm walking around your altar." Because this is the way people worship in the temple. People will walk around the temple. Parikrama they call it. You do a round, go around the temple walking once. That is you showing your reverence to the God. And some places like mountain Arunachala where Ramana Maharishi used to live, the people go around the mountain, 13 kilometers walk. They say this is our way of showing our respect to the Lord. And if they have a wish in their mind, they say with that wish, when we walk around that hill, our wish will be granted. So with that belief they walk around, do a parikrama. But some others say, why that? Wherever I am walking, that should be considered as a parikrama to you. Why? Because you are everywhere. God is everywhere. Here he also says the same thing. It is all pervading. Sarva vyapta. Yena sarvam idam tatam. Sarvam means everything. So this unitive way of thinking, or this concept of having this yogic vision, this makes the difference between a sadhaka and a non-sadhaka. So worship here is to be understood. Worshipping by one's own occupation. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushthitat swabhava niyatam karma kuruvanna apnoti kilvisham. This is another very fundamental and basic idea, that is doing swadharma. Shreya. Shreyas means merit, goodness, is gained by doing one's own swadharma. And don't do paradharma. Paradharma means another person's dharma. What happens when a person does another person's dharma? He might become humble, artificially humble. He behaves in an artificial way. He will pretend. He cannot be really natural and nearly true. That is the difference with paradharma. No matter how nicely you do it, the person does not feel comfortable. He feels he is imitating or he is exaggerating. So here when a person is doing swadharma, that person is very, very natural. He is doing something which is totally in tune with his own nature. So swadharma is the shreyan. Swabhava niyatam karma kurvanna apnoti kilbisham. By doing the duty determined by his own nature incurs no sin. That is the important thing. That each person should look for a duty, look for an occupation, look for a job which is in tune with his own nature. If a person has got a poetic mind, if a person is a quiet person by nature, he should not look for a job in a noisy place or look for a job which has strains. He'll get upset. So he will become a misfit. This happens in a few cases where people make the wrong choice. So in making choices, a person should see that that occupation suits one's own nature. Sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham api natyajet sarvaramba hidoshena dhumena agni rivavritaha. There's another thing about action. Action is always imperfect. No matter whatever action you do, whatever karma you do, however well you try to do it, there is always an element of imperfection in it. So he says, just like smoke accompanies fire, similarly karma also has the defect of imperfection. But duty naturally belonging to one by birth, though accompanied by defects, ought not to be abandoned. All undertakings are enveloped with defects. So this is again coming to Arjuna's point, where he was concerned about his killing and all the harm that will come about. Well, all action has that problem of defect in it. It is necessary to perform action, and yet action is inferior, and action is full of defects. Yet we perform actions. When you perform your action, what is the attitude that you should have? That is mentioned here. Asakta buddhihi sarvatra jitatma vigata spruha naishkarmya siddhim paramam sannyasena adhigacchati. He whose buddhi or his reasoning is unattached, asakta. Sakta means to become attached, asakta means unattached. Unattached buddhihi sarvatra, in all situations. In whichever situation he is, if his buddhi is unattached, jitatma, his atma has been won over. See, it is always considered more difficult to win over one's own self. It is easy to subdue another person. It is easy to control another person. It is more difficult to control one's own self. It is more difficult to conquer one's own self. Conquering oneself means one's lower nature. All the tendencies that are hiding in a person, to overcome those, it's much more difficult. Vigata spruha. Spruha means to have desire. And vigata spruha means one whose desires are gone. Sannyasena adhigacchati. He reaches by sannyasa paramam siddhim.
He reaches the perfect siddhi of Naishkarmya. So perfection is gained only by Naishkarmya. That means transcending action. And you cannot transcend action by giving up action. This is the beauty of the situation. One person must perform action, though the actions are imperfect. But through the performance of action, finally, one person comes to Naishkarmya Siddhi. That means transcending action. And that is the state of the sannyasi where you have transcended action. And when the self has become purified, when the reason has become purified, it has become unattached. When all the desires have gone, then a person reaches his perfection. He whose reason is unattached in all situations, whose self has been won over, from whom desire has gone, then by renunciation. Simply renunciation will not bring any benefit. Means just abandoning, just giving up, just letting go. No. But by the siddhi of karma, doing karma and transcending the karma, that is how perfection is to be reached. Reaches the supreme perfection of transcending action. Now practical spirituality continues in a more contemplative sense. When you say siddhim, so up to this level we were discussing more outwardly aspect. From here we will, the inward. When you say contemplative, it means those values concerning our inner life or our inner being. Siddhim prapto yatha brahma yathapnoti nivodame samasena eva kaunteya nishtha jnanasya yapara. How he who has ascended to perfection thereby obtains the absolute. Now you must say, all this sannyasa, what is the goal? What is the goal of a yogi? What is the goal of a siddhi? What is the goal of a bhakta? Why do people pursue this path? So earlier on in the 4th chapter he says 4 types of people. First of all, it is only good people who look for God. The evil person never looks for God. The good look. Among the good again there are 4 types, and they are called Artha Jignasu, Artharthi and the Jnani. Artha means person who has difficulty, who is facing problems, who is suffering. So he looks towards God so that his suffering be removed. He prays to God for the removal of his suffering. Artha Jignasu. Jignasu means one who is curious. He's got an inquiring mind. He wants to know. So he's searching. Artharthi. Artharthi means one who needs the goods of life. He wants good things of life. Once his thirst for knowledge is satisfied, he likes to have the good things of life. So he too seeks God. And then the 4th is the Jnani, or the wise person. And of these, the wise is considered the greatest. The person who wants to know, wants knowledge about God. Such people are very few, and they are the most superior. So in the earlier chapter, chapter 4, Sri Krishna says that Jnani is considered to be equal to me. I consider him to be the same. I am in him and he is in me. So Jnanis are put at a higher level. And the other 3 are considered more to be in the worldly plane. That is the Artha Jignasu, Artha Arthi. So always the goal is God, but for different purposes. For the Jnani, the goal of God is only for the love